Think we're live. Hey, everybody. Wendy Melrose here with Resilience Press and the Heal Whole Call podcast. And I'm here with Sara Schaffer, who helps people show up confidently with their message and visibility. Today, we're just having a real conversation about something we both see all the time. People who know they have a story that could help others, but they aren't sure what to do next. Or even if they've got a book and they're like, now what, right? So if you're watching live, I'd love for you to comment hello and tell us where you're watching from. So if you've ever wondered if your story might be meant for more than just you, I'd love for you to also comment story so that we know you're here, or if you're watching the replay, that we know that we can connect with you. So Sara, hello.
Good morning.
Do you want to share with everyone where you're from?
Yes, I'm from Denver and I love it here. It is supposed to hit 80 degrees today, so it's going to be nuts.
You know what's great about you hitting 80 degrees? A day later, I get 80 degrees.
There you
go. So, oh my gosh. Well, I know that you guys have had a really mild winter, but some people don't like the cold there, even though they choose to live in Denver. I'm like, what are you doing there?
Right? I know we're a little bit, we get picky because we get so much sunshine. So,
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I would love to start with a quick question. So from your perspective, what do you see happen when someone knows they have a story, but they just feel stuck?
Well, when people have stories and they are feeling that prompting to get it out there, I think a lot of times the first thing people might say to themselves is that they're not a writer. And that, that may be true that that's not your profession, or, maybe English wasn't your favorite class in high school, but that doesn't mean that your story isn't meant to be shared through a book or through speaking. And I love that we're talking today because what you're offering is a way for people to get their stories out without having to be professional writers.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's so often people are just like, yeah, but I can't type well, or maybe they have a disability, dyslexia or whatever. And they feel like that's inhibiting them from being able to get the story out. Right. Well, we live in the age of technology, and I'm not talking about having ChatGPT write it. What I am talking is a lot of people are talk messaging, because now we have easy ways to record and it to transcribe now. So you never have to put hand to fingers on a keyboard anymore. You could literally talk dictate your entire book out. And that's why we have editors to help clean it up, because you were going to have an editor clean it up anyway, right?
Right. I mean, everybody needs to do that, whether they're an excellent writer or just, talking into their computer, or, telling their story in some other way. For sure. We all need editors.
But it's so funny. Like sometimes I'll type it out and I'll get my letters backwards just because, I know the order. I've been typing since I learned on the typewriter back in the 1900s, right? Mm-hmm. But there's just some keys I will get the letters flipped. And so I'm like, thank goodness for autocorrect, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So I would love to see, where do you usually see people struggle the most when they decide to start sharing your story? I know that you just said how they don't feel like they're a writer, but do you ever see them struggle some way else as well?
Yeah, the other thing that came to mind when you asked that was just that how do they go about it? They have no idea how to tell a story, how to structure a story. And then, of course, the whole daunting universe of publishing and, that's just a whole different world, which those of us who are in the book world and publishing, we also know, this is kind of a whole place in and of itself. And so I think just the how-to, which is why, I'm really excited about what you're offering people. And I'm thrilled that I get to come alongside as well, because, when you're offering your story stewardship pathway, you're answering that very question. How do I go about it? And you're answering the question of, do I need to be a professional writer? Which, as we've already said, is of course not. You don't need to be a writer. You have to have a story. And so I think what you're offering is really valuable to people, and the way that you're offering it is really cool. I know we're going to get into all the details of that maybe a little later, but I think, if you're listening and you have a story, Wendy and I were chatting last week, and it's really fun because she's got like, here's the first step. You just step into it with this first step of her program, and it's great. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons, guys, that I'm so glad that the Lord brought Sara into my life is she helps people from the very beginning on how to really start stewarding it, not even just with the book, not just with speaking, not just with podcasts, but we think that we have to do everything. Okay, step one, outline. Step two, write book. Step three, cover. Step four, launch. Step three, finally talk about it. We need to talk about it from the very beginning before we even put pen to paper, because when we start sharing the vulnerabilities of our life, or what God has, just like my mom shared with me in a very interesting Instagram post about how all things are for God, all things are for our good. I'm going to mess it up. My point is that sometimes we think God allows bad. But what he does is everything he can be make into good. So if you had something bad happen, he can use it for his good, for his glory. So he didn't allow the bad thing to happen, but we can use it to help build the kingdom and to help others who've also been there. And so when we start talking about that, before we've written a book, before we've on stages, before all the different things, and Sara, her superpower is, how do we talk about this on socials? Which social do we choose? Right? Do we do TikTok? Do we do Facebook? Do we do LinkedIn? Do we do Instagram? Do we do them all? It can be very daunting and scary. It's scary to say, what? We don't have to do them all.
No, absolutely not. Do not do them all, my friend. I mean, like, even I will just give this one away today. So please know that yes, you have to have an audience to buy your book, and it's important to know who that audience is, because really, yes, we're telling our story, but we're telling it to someone, and we need to think of who that audience member is. Who is that one we're writing to? And then as we clarify that, then it makes it more clear where we're going to sell our book online, or where. And people hate the word sell. I know it's a 4-letter word, but really what you're doing with your story is you're serving people, because what you have gone through and the transformation you've experienced and the hope you now have is hope that you're holding for somebody else. And your story is that way through for that person who's on the front end of that same type of trial. And so that's why we're so passionate about helping you get your story out there, and why social media can be a real gift. It's really amoral. It's not good or bad. It's what we do with it that determines, whether social media is quote unquote good or bad. And so if you know that you have a story that is about leadership, that is about business, you're not going to want to sell that necessarily just on Facebook, although there are a lot of leaders and small business people on Facebook. But I would say LinkedIn might be more your audience, especially if you're talking about leadership. But if you have a story about something that happened as a young parent, as a young mom, you might want to be on Instagram, and not on LinkedIn, because that's going to be more your audience. And so, yeah, I come alongside. I help you narrow down who are you talking to and where are those people hanging out. And then we start, basically, it's like walking into a big room on social media, is walking into a big room and starting a conversation with somebody. And it's just virtual instead of physical.
Right. And I know, like you had said, that, sell is a 4-letter word nobody likes, but I almost kind of like to share it as like giving, because we're giving people the opportunity to either take your book because you're giving it to them, or if they're like I really want that book, then they can give you money in reciprocity for said book. So it's never like, and we're selling every day, but I've also been in sales that, for decades. So it's like, to me, it just comes natural. I could be in the grocery aisle. People are like, which one's the best, best bread? I'm like, well, you've got this, and you can do half loaf, or you can full loaf. I could sell the whole bread aisle if I wanted to, because it's fun for me. Because I don't look at it as selling. I look at it as educating and helping people. And when you educate and help people, it becomes a wonderful opportunity to share with the world what God's done. Like, God's changed my life because of this. And you're going through that too. Like, here's my book, check it out. Or I've got this book on Amazon, check it out, or whatever. So So you look at it for giving and sharing and not selling, the whole world changes. So I wanted to kind of dive in a little bit about, why I created the Story Stewardship Pathway, where I felt led to. It is because people don't just need publishing, they need guidance on how to steward that message. So people need clarity first. Sometimes you're like, I know what I want to write, but my life is this long already. What part do I share? And do I do all of it? Well, some of us would have an encyclopedia worth of amount of volumes of what's going on. Well, we don't always need to know all the information. And then, so we get clarity first. We pray about it. We steward, like, what is it that you feel called to right now? Maybe there's multiple books, right? And then we talk about how that is being created. How do we create it? How do we refine it? And then Sara also helps us with we work together to help you get visible. And it's really all about the whole journey. Mm-hmm. So if you're watching this, I'm curious, what part feels the hardest? Is it getting started? Is it the confidence? You feel less than, or you don't feel worthy, or people have told you don't share that, or like you've got loved ones who are still living who may have caused that pain. Well, there's ways to tell the story and still be of honor to those that, may still be living, who helped cause whatever it is that you feel called to write about. So don't let anything stop you. If God has said, I want you to write this, then there's ways that we can help build the confidence to do that and to structure it in a way that is protective of you, protective of others, but still helps the world. And then knowing where to share. So just kind of share what part feels the hardest, and we'll be sure supposedly we're going to be able to see comments on here. I can't see any comments. So dude, I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to Streamer, but we'll make sure that we answer those comments when you guys, when we check the socials, when we're done with this. So one of the things that I've learned is that God never wastes our stories, but we do have to decide what we're going to do with them. And doing something with them is when we become stewards of what we've been through and how we're going to respond to all of it. Mm-hmm. So Sara, I'd love to ask, what changes when someone finally decides to share their story publicly?
Gosh, a lot of things change. It takes a lot of courage, like what you were just saying, that when we go through things that are difficult and we've made it through, sometimes we just want to move on and not have to think about those things. For me, years ago, when I was 26, I moved to Colorado. It was my husband's dream to live here. And we got here June 6th. It was great. Fall came, snow started falling. He wanted to go skiing. They weren't doing ski lessons opening weekend, and loved him, but did not want to, have him teach me how to ski down the mountain. So I just let him go alone, and I stayed home. And 5 months to the day, on November 6th, I found out that he had skied down that mountain and fallen and hit his head on a rock. And the police came and told me the next day that he had died instantly on the mountain. And so my whole life changed, in that one instant. And so when I think now, 26 years later, about that experience, there's a little piece of me that's like, I don't want to share that story anymore, and yet I know there are people all the time that are experiencing losses of all different sorts and types that could maybe benefit from the things that God taught me over those next few years while I walked through that grief. And so the first thing when we say we're going to go public is saying, I'm going to have the courage to obey and do what God's calling me to do. And I think the next thing that can happen is really just as when you're going through those really difficult things, you get the sweet presence of God in such a unique way when you're experiencing loss. And then or whatever it is that people have gone through. But then there's a special kind of sweetness of his presence as you're preparing to share about that as well. And so I think there's both that fear and that connection when you're obeying God and doing something difficult that is really, really worth it, even as you begin the process, not even as you see the result.
That's really beautiful. And we want everybody to know that this really isn't for everyone. It's for people who feel like their story could actually help someone else. And also, I want to be clear. So we never want to do it for our own personal pat on the back or, for people. If you're looking at it for your own spotlight, it's not the right time. If you are looking for it only from a heart of being to serve others and to realize that, if only one person was helped, it was enough to share the story, then that is where we want to be. Plus, we also need to understand some people aren't going to receive our story well. And are we ready to just be like, you know what, Lord, I'm going to give this out to the world. If someone doesn't receive it the way I wanted them to receive it, that's on them, not on me. Right? To be able to, and then have people around you to encourage you to keep going, even when our exposure might get bigger and people might be like, hey, that story is, I don't like that story. Well, but we don't know why they don't like that story. It could just be that's a little closer to their situation and they don't like how great you were able to get through that situation because they don't know how to do that themselves. So, and also, sometimes people just want clarity on what the next steps look like for themselves. So if you're listening and something here resonates and you just need guidance on what to do next, remember to comment story, or you can message one of us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, and comment story, and we will make sure that we have that conversation with you. So Sara, is there anything else that has come to your mind since we were talking that you wanted to bring up before we close out?
Yeah, I think what we really wanted to communicate just is that you have a story. We all have stories. I mean, it's interesting, but we're not always in the right place, like you were just saying. But you all have a story. Everybody who's watching this has something that they have been through. And I think it can be really easy for us to dismiss the value of our own life experience. Maybe you didn't lose a spouse when you were 26. That's kind of a dramatic story that I've been through, but you've probably been through some rocky things, whether it's job changes or marital conflict or things with your kids. There's all sorts of ways that God has worked in your life to help you look more like Jesus. And those things matter to be shared. And so now I'm getting lost in the weeds a little bit. What I just want to say is I just want to encourage you that whatever way God has worked in your life is something that another person can benefit from learning.
Right.
That you can be the shortcut for them in that particular process, just like somebody maybe helped you through your process a bit. And so if you have that story, you have it kind of it's been in your mind, it's kind of burning in your, here or in your gut. This is the time just to reach out and have a conversation with Wendy about it and see if this is the right process for you. Because the way she's laid out the story stewardship pathway, again, you don't have to commit to years of your life or anything like that. She really has it set up to take one step at a time, and you can take one step and then the next step. And it's very gentle and it's very helpful. And she and I together will help you through all the things that you don't know so that you can concentrate on the thing you do know, which is your story and how God has helped you.
Yeah, so good. And I'll make sure that I have a link for you guys to schedule time with me for story stewardship conversations. And even if you're not sure yet what exactly the conversation would look like, sometimes clarity is really just one conversation away. So everyone, thank you so much, Sara, for being here with me. Yeah. Thank you everyone who's watched. If you have anything that you would love for us to jump on or like for me to talk about, I'm happy to do a live specifically for your question. Just let me know. And so thank you everyone for being here today. And again, if you've caught us live or you're on the replay, say hello. And if this is something you think about your story, we'd love to hear from you. And thank you again, everybody. Thanks, Sara.
Thanks.